So once again, here's our speaker for tonight for our mental health committee, Amanda Lynch.
All right, can you guys see okay?
Yes.
All right, I'm trying to go to present full screen. So I can't see your lovely faces while I am sharing my screen. But I thought tonight we would talk about just de-stressing from all of the things that um, are happening in our day-to-day lives, school, community, all of the places that we live, work, and play. If you guys want to just drop your names in the chat, I will take the screen down in between just to see your names, age, if you'd like to share that, maybe what school you go to. I was a classroom teacher for a very long time, and I currently work at the health department for my full time job. I also have four kids who range in age from 26 to 8 years old. And so, as you can imagine, my household is very busy all the time. And so today, just make sure that you know there's no pressure to respond. I'd love for you when we get to the questions and discussion points for you guys to share. This isn't just my workshop, it's our workshop and our time together. If you need to take a break, feel free to do so. Grab water, move around, step out of the room. Just make sure you're showing up for yourself as you need to today. So today we're going to talk about what stress and trauma can look and feel like. Like what do I mean when I say something is a traumatic event? We'll also talk about how it affects teens, kids, adults, and then learn ways and discuss ways to support ourselves and each other. So, when we think about traumatic stress, I want you to just remember that it's not just the event that happens, but how our body responds to that event. So, it's just our normal reaction or response to something that might be scary, sad, something that could cause anxiety or make us feel overwhelmed. All of us experience stress differently. Stress can make it hard to think or focus. It could even make it difficult for you to sleep or just feel okay. Sometimes the effects stick around even after the event is over. So, if you hear me talking about acute stress or trauma, that happens from something that might be a one time event. So, something like getting into a fight or maybe a car accident, a car crash, right? So, something that's probably not going to happen every day, may not even happen again, just that one time event. Chronic stress is probably something that's a little bit more ongoing, a little happening over time. So something like maybe being bullied at school or in your community, maybe having a tough home situation, maybe you yourself struggling with your mental health, right? So anything that could just be ongoing. And then when we think about complex, so normally that's something that happens early on in your life, so before the age of 5 or 6, and something that can be pretty hard for you to understand or explain. So maybe you have experienced some type of trauma or abuse from someone who is a loved one, right? So that could be something that's complex trauma. And we all know that these traumatic events can happen anywhere. I don't know anyone who hasn't had something traumatic happen to them. And it doesn't have to be the worst thing that could ever happen to someone. So, for example, my parents got divorced when I was 2 years old. Right. That wasn't really traumatic for me because I was like a toddler, a baby. But for my brother and sister who were 11 and 12, that was a much different situation for them. And so that was something traumatic that happened at home. There could be things that happen in school or even in your friend groups. I can remember when my favorite teacher, who was my kindergarten and second grade teacher, she moved away from our school when I was going into third grade. She got married, had a baby, and wanted to take some time off. But for me as a 7 year old, she was my safe space. And so that felt traumatic for me. There are lots of things that happen on the news, online every single day that could also show up as trauma. I try not to watch the news because I'm finding more and more that they're never talking about anything positive or happy or things that, makes me feel full of joy. And so you can also be traumatized from the things you watch on TV. My oldest daughter and I were watching a documentary on Netflix the other day, and I got so overwhelmed that I was crying. So, even with what you watch on TV, can also elicit that type of response in you. Also, if you're in systems that feel unfair or harmful. So if you, are in a system where, um, example comes to mind with dress code. So sometimes dress coding can feel unfair, or maybe you're feeling singled out, or maybe the consequence doesn't really seem to fit what you've done. So something like that can also feel unfair. Or maybe you attend a school that isn't adequately funded. So that could also be harmful or unfair. So, some things that might contribute to your brain and body sort of absorbing some of these stressful situations to the point where you're overwhelmed is when you are hearing hard stories over and over and over. I don't know about you guys, but I have a friend who I talk to most every day, and every day something is wrong. So, every day she's pouring and dumping all of her stress onto me. And so that can contribute to me feeling stressed out. She's feeling better after we get off the phone, but now she's kind of dumped all of that on me, right? And so hearing those things over and over and over can contribute to me feeling overwhelmed or you feeling overwhelmed, not feeling like you have enough support or resources. And so I would encourage you to make sure that you have a safe, a trusted adult, whether it's someone in your home, someone in a out of school time activity, someone at school, so that when you're having some of these stressful things, or you're starting to feel like, hey, my stress isn't really manageable right now, you have someone that you can go and talk to, and not just vent to, but someone who can actually give you some resources and supports. My younger two girls were arguing earlier today. They're 8 and 11. And my 11-year-old said, I don't know why she's mad at me. She was telling me about a friend that was being unkind to her. I started to give her advice, and her sister didn't want advice. And so I shared with her that sometimes you have to ask people, hey, do you want me to just listen, or do you want support, right? And so sometimes people don't want support, and they just want to like dump on you. And so maybe you suggest that they talk to someone else. Maybe if you're having conflicts or feeling stuck at work or school, and so maybe you aren't feeling like you're fitting in, or maybe you don't feel like you found your friend group yet, right? That can also contribute to you feeling stressed out. Or when you feel a pressure to help when you're already tired. I am like really bad at asking my youngest daughter to do a lot of the chores because she enjoys things like washing dishes and cleaning up, but she doesn't always want to do that. And so making sure that she doesn't feel pressured, especially like when her cup is not full. So if she's already tired or hungry or irritable, right? So making sure that she's not feeling pressured to do more than what she can is capable of doing. Any questions so far? If so, you guys can unmute because I can't see you. Okay. And then some other risk factors for, feeling overwhelmed or like your stress might not be manageable is when you have your own tough experiences. And so if you're dealing with your own stuff, it's really easy to start to feel overwhelmed by things that are happening around you. So if you know that you have too much on your plate in particular, maybe you want to start to think about what are some stress reducing strategies that you can use so that you're not feeling so overwhelmed. If you feel alone, or if you don't feel like you have that safe, trusted adult, or you don't have that solid friend group yet, right? That can also contribute to stress, or not even knowing how to handle your feelings. Maybe people in your household don't model healthy ways to handle their feelings. My mom, for example, is and was someone who's like a big screamer. And so everything was like a national emergency when stressful things happened, right? I never saw her really like stopping to take a deep breath or doing things that were just for herself or things like that, right? And so maybe you don't know how to handle when your feelings feel a little bit big. And so when we think about how we're impacted, it's not just, stress happens and we just keep going, right? There are real things that show up in our bodies. And so you might have trouble sleeping. Maybe you're having stomach aches or feeling tired all the time. Maybe you're getting sick more often or just feeling run down. Even in your mind, maybe you're feeling anxious or sad. Maybe you're having trouble focusing or remembering things. I lose my house keys all the time, right? I have a lot to manage in my home as a single mom with 4 kids and a job and all of the things, right? And so I know that when I start to feel forgetful, that maybe I'm carrying a little bit too much. Maybe you're feeling bad about yourself or you're using things to numb, like um, eating all the time, even when you're not hungry, or you're constantly on screens, or maybe you've started to use substances that you shouldn't use because you just don't want to feel or you do want to feel. Stress even changes how different parts of our brain work together, especially when we're overwhelmed. The two parts of our brain that I want you to remember first is your amygdala. So you have two amygdalae, one over each of your ears. That's really like the barking dog part of your body and brain. It sets off the alarm. So we have a little dog. He's 10 pounds. He's a little yappy dog. If anybody walks by my house, whether it's the mailman, whether it's the neighbor, if it's an ant on the floor, Bentley goes completely crazy, right? And so he thinks that he's the security guard of our house. Our amygdala is the same way. That part of our brain is there to help us survive. So you're not going to just walk out into traffic because your amygdala is scanning the environment, wanting to keep you safe. Sometimes our amygdala can misread situations, though. And so spaces that really are safe feel unsafe to our amygdala. For example, if we were all in the same room and a grizzly bear ran in here, we'd have lots of different responses. And so some of us might run out of the room. Some of us might start crying. Somebody might try to fight the bear, right? We're going to all have a different response. But for some people, even seeing a teddy bear, which is pretty harmless, their brain, their amygdala is registering that like it's a grizzly bear. The part of our brain that is responsible for thinking clearly, for responding instead of reacting, for having empathy and sympathy, that's going to be that wise old owl. And that's at the top of your brain. And so if you're looking from your alligator all the way to your owl, that's like walking. I want you to imagine that you're walking up a set of stairs. So that brain stem, that's going to be your bottom part of your brain. Next up is that barking dog. Midbrain is going to be where your memories happen. And then that top, that owl, that prefrontal cortex, that's where we are expecting everyone to pull from that we talk to. Everybody at school, everybody in our home, ourselves, right? We want people to be able to be rational, in control of their emotions, right? But sometimes things happen that make that amygdala really, really strong. And so if you're not managing your stress well, if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not in spaces where you know that you're safe or you feel safe, that barking dog is going to be on high alert. And the part of the brain that we use the most is what's going to be heaviest. So if I'm in a school or if I am in a home where I'm always in survival mode or on guard, that amygdala is going to be ready to fire. So I also want you to think about if somebody yells at you, do you want to fight? Right? So you want to get aggressive, you want to go towards the person. Do you want to run away or avoid it? Do you go blank? You can't speak, you feel stuck, right? I want you guys to share with me for just a second. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see you. How is it that you show up when someone is yelling or you're feeling like someone is challenging you? And I'm not going to call on you guys, so it's completely optional to share.
I like to defend, so I would say fight.
So you go towards the aggressor.
Yeah. In a defensive way.
Anyone else? Thank you for sharing that, Jamie.
What is the way if you still like in a sense fight them, but not in an aggressive way?
Well, your
Is that
body,
still fight?
yeah, I'd say that's still fight. I'm gonna pull it back up just so you guys can see it.
Yeah.
And you might go into more than one of these. So you may go into fawn and freeze. So trying to avoid the conflict, but also feeling stuck and now maybe shutting down. So it may not be just one that happens to you too.
I would be quiet and look at them like they're crazy. Um, and then I'd probably get home and be angry about it. Because I wouldn't want to start a fight in public, depending on where I'm at.
So yours, you would try to like avoid it.
I would probably just be quiet,
Okay.
and just look at them like, and not give them what they want. But then I would
Okay.
go home and be very angry about it and be cautious of them.
Do you ever late afterwards think of all the things that you wish you'd said?
Yes, but I realize that you can't take back words. I've
Yes.
learned that to take
Yes.
breaths and I
Yes.
count in my head.
Absolutely. And
But
that's really
sometimes I would like to say
me
more.
too. And that's really like when you pull on mindfulness so you can put a space between what's happened and how you respond instead of how you react.
I'm
I
gonna
love
say
it.
I'm gonna say I'm probably defensive, like Jamie said, but I also will sit there and shut down and just fume to myself if there's no one there to mumble to.
So what do you do that helps you to calm down while you're fuming?
Good question.
So what
Sometimes,
think about
sometimes,
that?
yeah, sometimes it takes a while to calm down.
Yes.
So
And so, what's happening in your brain and body is all types of hormones are flooding through. So, neuroadrenaline, cortisol, all of these things are happening. So, you're exactly right. It does take some time for those things to diminish. And so, sometimes people will say to us, you really need to calm down, right? And that doesn't do anything but like amp you up because now that feels like more of a challenge. So, some things that you can do when you realize, hey, this situation has happened, I got to make a decision whether I'm going to react or respond. The first thing I always do is take a deep breath. I try to take a deep breath before I say whatever is ready to come out of my mouth because I know that's going to give me some space to be able to pull from that prefrontal cortex and reminding my amygdala, hey, no, I'm safe. Something that I will do with my kids, I will give them ice to melt on their tongue and push in the top of their mouth because that also activates your nervous system in a different way where it helps you to calm down. There are other things, maybe just walking away, right? And taking a walk, breathing while you're doing that. That's something else that can help you to calm yourself down. The goal is being able to calm yourself down and regulate your own emotions. And so we just talked about like what stress responses you might see, if someone is yelling at you. But I want you to think about, and you guys don't have to share this, what are some stress responses you might even see in your families, in the folks that, you are around at school or even your teachers, right? So what are some responses that you may see other people having that might not be healthy? And now it's another opportunity for us to share really quickly. What are some things that help you to stay afloat? So, what are those things that you use when things get hard or stressful? For me, I am always drinking ice water, or I will go to listen to different types of music. Like I have different playlists for different events. So, if I'm stressed out or if I'm sad, that might be a different playlist. If I'm tired, that's a different playlist. So, what are some things that you guys do to help yourselves stay afloat when things get hard? I'm coming back to look at you.
I definitely do the music thing as well. I've now found my company introduced us to this aromatherapy Play-Doh. really
Mhm.
enjoying that.
Mhm.
um, Other than that, just maybe I'll go back and watch a show I used to watch when I was little, something that brings up a good memory, so I can just kind of
Yes.
go into my own space.
I love that. When I got overwhelmed watching that documentary with my daughter the other day, I was like, please turn to Monk. Like, I just need a show that I've seen before, that I can predict what's going to happen so that I can calm myself down, right? I don't want to feel terrified while I'm at home. So I love that. Do I pronounce your name Elena?
Elena or Alana, but yeah, I love Monk too.
Okay. Anyone else want to share anything? And again,
My
everything.
show would be Friends. I love Friends because it's funny.
Yes.
I drink a lot of tea to calm me down, and I like to meditate and like, do breathing and just like meditate and listen to calming music. But I definitely
Mm.
listen to different music during the day, it, depending on my mood.
And
I drink a lot of tea and a lot of water. I
can you
hydrate a lot.
do you notice a change in your mood based on what music you listen to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you don't want to listen to the saddest thing ever when you're
Mm-mm.
already feeling sad and depressed, right?
No.
And so I got into a little bit of a habit of doing that sometimes. And I'm like, so this is just making me cry. And so, and so you want to think about, maybe not listening to the saddest music ever when
No.
you're experiencing a breakup or you've had an argument with your parent or, whatever. And maybe
Happy music.
listening to something a little different.
Journaling for me helps me get through it, or also just like being around another person with that like physical presence.
Absolutely. And so maybe not being alone so much. And it can be really easy to kind of shut yourself off and just be in your room. I know for me, especially having like so many people at my house all the time, it's much easier for me to just like, nope, shut my door, going to watch ID channel, versus like being out amongst everybody. But that's certainly not helpful for your mood most of the time.
I'll go to my room and make sure I take the dog with me and
Hmm.
attack the dog and give some extra loving to him, and might just let myself go to sleep so I don't have to think about things.
Yeah. And just starting again the next day. And I love that about you spending time with your dog. My kids desperately want a cat, but I'm terrified of cats. So we go to the SPCA a lot so they can play with cats and I don't have to be a part of the experience. And so even having that opportunity, if you don't have a pet, to make some time to find time to play with pets or play in nature. My dog is currently going crazy at somebody else again. I'm sorry if you guys can hear him yelling in the background. He thinks he's like a great. And then another thing is focusing over what you have control over. And so one of the reasons I stopped watching the news is because I don't really have control over much of what's happening on the news. And so trying to lessen my exposure and my impact to things that I really can't change. And so finding ways for yourself, if there are things that are causing you to feel stressed out or overwhelmed that you don't have any control over, thinking about how you can lessen your exposure so that you can also lessen the impact there. Making sure that you're responding to your own needs first. And so when I get up in the morning, one of the first things that I do is sort of like a self inventory. So I think about what I need, whether it's a hug from my kids, am I hungry? Am I going to make sure the night before that lunch is packed and I've already thought about dinner or breakfast the next day, right? And so I'm not just grabbing anything because I already have a plan for what I'm eating, whether it's a protein shake or something very quickly that, we can throw in the microwave to get to school, right? And so what do I need to nourish myself so that I can make sure that my emotional, mental, and physical needs are being met? Also want to think about when stressful things happen, is this an issue of my effort or is this a skill deficit? So if I am doing calculus homework, that's probably an issue of skill for me. I've never been a kid or adult who was great at math, right? And so I could put forth all of the effort, but maybe I need to ask for some help because I may not have the skill to do the task that I've been given. Also, there are situations that may come up that can't be fixed. And so that's okay, right? You can't fix everything, and it's not your job to fix everything. There are times where I know that I'm carrying too much. And so doing that inventory as well. I will never say no when people ask for workshops or me to come and do an author visit or for me to, do a consultation, right? But I've had to start to slow myself down because my workload wasn't manageable. And so how do I lighten my load? Again, that goes with asking for help. And then also, is this something that is my job to fix? Is this something that's my job to do? Maybe if it's not, I need to set a boundary there. I don't want to listen to someone dump on me every day. And at this point, that's on me because I keep answering the phone and not setting a boundary there. And so, what does that look like for me to simply say, hey, no, I can't do this? Or, hey, I don't have the capacity to listen to this right now, right? And then also, am I feeling unheard? My 8-year-old, she's the youngest, and there's a huge gap between my son and her, right? So my older kids want to do everything for her. Sometimes they are not listening to what she says or her opinion because she's so much younger than them, right? And so I want to make sure that she knows how to express herself in a mindful way when she's feeling unheard instead of turning into a Ninja Turtle, which is what she will sometimes do when she's not communicating in the most mindful way. So you don't want to wait until everything like stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks, and then you flipped your lid and now your amygdala is completely out of control. And then also, how can you mitigate the impact? So, what are some things that you can put between yourself and the stressor? So, something like grounding, which might look like me looking around the space that I'm in for one thing I can eat, two things I can smell, three things I can touch, four things I can hear, and five things I can't remember what the last one is, but walking through my five senses that way. Also want to get up and move. And so am I making sure that I am walking for 15 minutes after each meal? Am I on my little machine doing, whatever I'm doing while I'm watching Monk, right? Just making time to move. I might have reminders set in my watch or phone that say, hey, you've been sitting too long. You need to get up and move. Connecting with other people. You guys gave some really good examples of making sure that you're not isolating, but that you're connecting. We as humans were designed for community. We weren't designed for isolation. And so, what does that look like for me to make sure I'm making healthy connections? I heard someone talk about journaling. And so that's a great way to self reflect. And then again, whenever possible, lessen the exposure. And so for me, I recognized the news was stressing me out. And so I've turned it off. When my parents come over here, they want to turn the news on while they're babysitting. And I'm like, nope, turn to Gunsmoke or Murder She Wrote or something else that's not going to stress me out. And so make sure that whatever you feel like is not pouring into you, but those things that are making withdrawals from you, that you can lessen your exposure to them. Things like mind-body connection, so yoga, Tai Chi, meditating while including some movement there. Those things will also help that amygdala and help your nervous system to be in a nice calm state. We talked about movement. So you want to make sure that you are moving for at least 30 minutes a day. That 30 minutes doesn't all have to be at one time. So you could break that 30 minutes up into 10 minutes, 15 minutes after each meal. And then also I want you to think about how the environment that you're in might impact your mood. So if we were all together at the library and I was giving this workshop and was talking in my yoga teacher voice, you're going to have a really different response to me versus if Beyonce walked in the room or Taylor Swift walked in the room or Ozzy Osbourne, rest his soul, walked in the room, right? You're going to have a really different response to them than you might have to me, right? Because every environment impacts our mood. I really like to go to the beach. I feel like I am my best self after I've been near water. And I know that that brings me a sense of calm and peace. And so I want you to think about what are the environments that you might find yourself in that also help to impact your mood. Maybe even making yourself a sensory toolkit. So we talked about, someone mentioned the Play-Doh that has essential oils. And so anything that can tap into your five senses in a positive way is going to help your brain and body to be in a nice, calm state. And so maybe dark chocolate, not eating, 25 pieces of it, being responsible and a good steward over your body and nutrition, but something like that, drinking water, eating fruit and vegetables, having essential oils, maybe watching the sunset. I listen to green noise to go to bed. I was listening to ID channel to go to bed, and you can imagine what kind of dreams that was causing me to have. And so now I'm falling asleep to green noise, which almost puts me to sleeping almost immediately. I have calm strips, Play-Doh, bubbles, all kinds of things pretty much in every corner of my house. And so maybe you've even set up a little nook or corner for yourself that has a fuzzy blanket, some slippers, a coloring book, things that you can use to attend to your five senses, right? And you maybe made a toolkit or a corner for yourself even at home. Eating the rainbow. And so not eating all of the French fries and fried food and all of the unhealthy things that you can grab on the go, but really being intentional about the foods that you choose to put in your body. I don't eat meat, and so I'm having to learn new ways to get protein because I wasn't getting enough and it wasn't giving me enough energy and causing my body to be out of whack. And so making sure that you are eating balanced meals and you're hitting all of those food groups as well. Also, setting boundaries. Saying no is probably the greatest boundary you can set, and just leaving it at no and not feeling like you have to over explain. And so giving yourself time to just say no and leaving it at that. You don't have to carry everyone's weight. And so you want to make sure that you're showing up for yourself before you're showing up for others as well. Like on the airplane, when they tell you to put your mask on first for oxygen, you want to make sure that you're doing that before you tend to other people. Taking breaks from your phone, I can see how much time my kids are on Roblox and all the other things that they do. I have limits set on all of those things. And so you want to make sure you have some of those limits set for yourself. I'm horrible about that. I love being on social media. I love playing Candy Crush. And so I have to make sure that I set limits on that. I also have to make sure I set limits on the types of things that I watch on TV because no one should watch murder mysteries all the time. And so making sure that I'm, watching comedies and I'm filling myself with positivity as well. I talked about taking breaks from the news, traveling if you can do that. And if not, maybe taking a staycation, see what's in your community, and taking naps. I love to take a nap. I love to take a nap at lunchtime. Maybe that's something that you might want to think about doing after school or on a break if you are not a student, right? Just making sure that you are getting enough rest. And I didn't say sleep, but I mean rest because they're not the same thing. Again, self reflection and journaling. There are lots of different types of journals that you can use. You can Google, different kinds of journals. One of my favorites is like a 365 journal. And so there's a prompt for every day. It's a different prompt, but you get that same prompt the next day, the same day for 5 years. So like whatever the prompt is on July 31st, 2025, it's the same prompt on every July 31st up until 2030. And so it will ask you a question like, if you were an animal, what would you be? And to see what kind of changes life brings for you over the course of 5 years. And then I want you to think about how you're tending to yourself. We're going to talk for just a moment after these next couple of slides. And then also think about what you need. And so when you treat yourself like a plant, what is it that plants need to thrive? What is it that you need to thrive? And how are you currently caring for yourself? I want you to just think about those two questions because we're going to talk about those in just a second. So, how are you caring for yourself or tending to yourself? And then what is it that you need? And so here's all my contact information. You guys can, get all of this from Jamie, if you'd like. But I want to take a second to just talk. If you guys have questions, we have a little bit of time left. And so I would love for someone to share, what is it that you do to tend to yourself or to care for yourself?
I was going to come in and say that's one of my biggest problems is that I set goals and then I reach the goal before I actually care about myself first. So I'm always thinking about everybody else. And it is very hard to, I don't know, it just feels selfish sometimes to have to think about yourself first. You know, my kids, I'll fix them food. I'll forget to eat sometimes. And, you know, that's not the way to live. And even in classroom, you got to do that too. And earlier when I talked about that, I was thinking about like when you're a teacher and you got to be in front of the room versus when you're out in the public and somebody attacks you at Walmart. It's, you know, that fight is a little different in Walmart, and you got to be a fawn and at the school and try to stay quiet and try to resolve it peacefully. So it's really hard to set and actually do it just for yourself. I do have a stress ball by the computer. I always keep that there. So I've been playing with that the whole time.
I hear you on the meals. I am horrible about making sure that I have all of the things that I need, and then I'm starving at lunchtime. And so, you know, then I'm not making the best choices. Um, yeah, it's really hard, especially when you care for other people or you're a caretaker, to make sure you're taking care of yourself first. Anyone else?
I might have a couple different things. I have, my job tends to be a little bit stressful. So over the years, I've had a bad boss voodoo doll. Colleague last year gave me a damn it doll.
Damn it.
I've had a, what's the other thing I had? Oh, well, a happy pill that you push it and it starts giggling. And like just hearing it giggle usually will set me off. And the people around me will hear it, they'll start giggling too. And I'm like, okay, cool.
You know, it's funny that you said that, Elena, because our body and brain can't tell the difference between like fake laughter and real laughter. And it sends those happy hormones either way. So I love that you have a way to just kind of cheer yourself up.
I'm going to go ahead and bring it and play for y'all.
Bentley crate. Sorry, that's my daughter yelling at the dog.
I take breaks every like 10 minutes every hour. I took a leadership class and it was telling you that like you could be way more productive if you just take 10 minutes and stretch and go walk outside for like 5 minutes and then come back in than if you just work like the full hour. So I try and get up and walk around and stretch and go outside and get some fresh air, even if it's for like 2 minutes, and make a cup of tea and I come back and I go back at it.
I love that, Carrie. Yeah, we weren't created to like sit indoors and sit at a computer all day. I mean, it's completely against like human biology. But unfortunately, we live in a society where most of us are indoors all day. You know, by middle school, most kids aren't getting recess or time to be outside or just unstructured time. And certainly for adults at work, we're not getting enough unstructured time either because we, you know, our lives are so overscheduled. And so I'm going to put that as a takeaway for
Yeah,
myself.
my Apple Watch tells me it's time to get up.
Yeah.
I programmed my Apple Watch.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to put that in my own toolkit to make sure that I'm taking those 10-minute breaks and scheduling that time for myself.
Yeah, it was in the other room, but it sounds like this. And that's only one push. But
I love that. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Definitely for me personally, I'm still in high school and I know throughout like the whole school year, like especially since I just had my junior year, I was not putting enough time aside for myself and I would do like little things on the weekend, but I did not really like focus on any physical activity like I used to because I got wrapped up in everything. And I've noticed like a big difference because of, first of all, my low workload hasn't been as much. But by getting back into like staying more physically active, like the endorphins I've gone through it have really helped with my stress since I used to get a lot of headaches because of stress.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Emma. Yeah, it's really important that we're making sure that we're taking care of all parts of ourselves. And so that physical, emotional, financial, environmental, like all of those things. And sometimes I'll do an activity where I'll have people take like just a plain piece of paper and fold it, into quarters and then just label each section. So maybe one section is in spiritual or physical, environmental, financial, like whatever your 4 quadrants you want to look at are, and list all of the things that you do for yourself that fall under that category. And it's really interesting to see how out of balance things can get sometimes. So I know for me, like physical, unless I'm intentional about it, because I work from home now, I don't get a lot of physical activity. Whereas when I was a teacher, I would get 20,000 steps easily in elementary school in a day. And now I can sit home and get 1,500 steps and be just as happy in my little chair, watching TV all day. And so being able to be intentional about making sure that you are getting that time in, raise those endorphins, and just raising your heartbeat and all of those things is just a really healthy strategy. And I encourage you guys to even do, like, after we finish, to even like just grab a piece of scrap paper and write those things down and kind of look at and see like, hey, maybe I'm not doing enough, with my nutrition, or if I'm interested in spirituality or the environment, or like whatever those important big categories are for you, and making a commitment to do something in an area where maybe you're not showing up fully. Thanks, Emma. Anyone else?
I have a question if nobody else wanted to go. Um, my question is, you talked about like dealing with trauma and grounding, but do you have any other suggestions for ways to help with anxiety from trauma?
Yeah, I'm always going to recommend therapy. I always recommend therapy. I'm not a therapist, but I always recommend making sure that you have someone that you can talk to. Also, things that like you can look on TikTok or other places. It's called the vagal nervous system. So it's almost like if you take a butterfly net and put it over your head, and how the net just kind of hangs down. Your vagal nervous system nerve kind of does the same thing. It's part of your nervous system, kind of does the same thing. And so things that will help to calm that part where anxiety lives, maybe taking like an ice pack and putting it over your breastbone. I'm always encouraging my kids again to like put an ice cube in their mouth and push it to the top of the roof of their mouth, because ice and cold are almost like an immediate shock to your nervous system that will send a reminder throughout your body that, hey, I'm safe. And so what anxiety is doing is like filling your body with fear of, and saying, hey, I'm not in a safe space, even when you are in a safe space. Also, breath work, meditation, those are things that work really well for me. I teach or taught restorative yoga, and you probably can find that on YouTube or other places online, where what that's trying to do is tap into your rest and digest part of your nervous system. So again, that's just really helping you to like find calm. Those would be some of probably the top 4 or 5 things that I would recommend for anxiety. But always going to recommend therapy, and then breath work is always my go-to. But I also know that that ice trick works almost immediately.
So I was also trying to think about like as being a teacher, you deal with it, the students, you can see it in their face, you can see
Mhm.
the attack about to happen. And normally I try to distract them to try to get it away, but I've always been trying to think of some more ways I could do to help my students.
I kept ice water in my classroom. I had a little refrigerator. I also like a cold baby wipe on the back of your neck will also like send those same signals. Turning the lights down. So
I do that.
because I was a behavior specialist, a lot of times kids who were like way up here, security would bring them in and want them to write statements and do all of these things. I'm like, this child is like completely dysregulated. And so we got to bring that down first. So again, anything with those 5 senses, gum, tapping, anything with touch like Velcro, and pairing those things with breath work and just giving somebody space. Like my mom was like the queen of, if I was mad, I was going to be big mad by the time she left out of the room. And so, like sometimes you just need some space. And so giving people like space, not being all up in their space, and then not taking it personal, and so a lot of times for those of us who are adults, we want to control the situation too. And so just not taking it personal. I don't know what kids go home to except for the ones that come home to my house. I don't know if kids have eaten, if they are in unsafe spaces or whatever. And they don't know what I'm going home to. And so those are just some of the ways. And then also thinking about my tone. Um, I think I mentioned this, Jamie, when we did the adult version, that I'm 4'11", so I'm not really like a physical threat to anybody, right? But for folks who aren't vertically challenged, think about how your presence might feel for other people. And so if there are ways to like be eye to eye or not standing over top or in somebody's space, and just letting someone naturally calm down. The goal is you pulling someone into your weather and not jumping into theirs. And just letting stuff go. I find like while I'm driving, people are like erratic and giving hand signals and, all kinds of stuff. And I just laugh and let stuff go. It's just not worth it. Any other questions, guys?
Well, Amanda, I'm going to thank you for coming out tonight and giving a presentation. I'm actually going to stop recording in a few seconds, but did anybody have a question for Amanda before? And you might have someone's afterwards. So did anybody have a question before I stop recording? Jen, do you have one?
No, I was just trying to do a round of applause for Amanda.
Okay.
It was very informative and I really appreciated it.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording now. If anybody wants to ask a question they really want to.